Morning, guys. Happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. We had a particularly crazy weekend. I'm just going to tell you about because I think it actually relates to smarter news. Our weekend started off with trying to get away. We've all been working a little too much. In fact, I'm sitting here at the computer. Let me just step away for a second. We've all been working a little too much, so we decided to take a last minute road trip. That last minute road trip led to a flat tire on the side of the road with our two kids around 9 o'clock at night in a desolate area where there was no one to call, in a very sketchy gas station that led to later. My husband, by the way, superhero, fixed it, thank goodness. And I had a nice gas station attendant that let my kids run around this gas station for like a half an hour. Um, that was followed up by like a terrible storm, uh, complete and total downpour in a place that we were trying to be outside. And then yesterday, a trip to urgent care for my daughter. So these are times where you think to yourself as an entrepreneur, can I actually do this? Like, am I really supposed to be doing this, considering everything that's going on? And my answer last night was yes. The reason why having a crazy life as a mom matters is because it makes you very clear about what's important and what's not. And when I was looking at the news last night, exhausted, I thought, wow, there's a whole lot of stuff here that doesn't matter to anybody. And if I wasn't living the life that I'm living now, it might not be, I might not see it that way. In fact, I know I wouldn't. So hopefully, the chaos sometimes in family life produces more clarity on the news side. And that's actually what Smarter News is about. Is about applying a different perspective to the news, because when you're not in sort of that media environment in New York or Washington, D.C., it allows you to think a little differently about what's being presented. And I think that's what we're able to do, although it's not always easy. So we did not have a perfect weekend. Oh my gosh, we did not. It is one for the ages. But um, again, hopefully the end result is something better for you, whether or not you have kids or not. By the way, that's not what Smarter News is about. It's not just for moms that are crazy like me, although I love you. It's for anybody that just needs a little bit more clarity. And all of us are multitasking, whether we have more, kids, no kids, married, not married, careers, no career. It doesn't really matter. So, okay, when I was looking at the news, I really thought, I mean, there's a lot of noise out there. There was one story I was checking in right before I got on live with you, which has to do with some outages at major airlines and airports. I don't have any clarity on that. I just want to flag that for you. Depending on when you watch this, we might have more information. So I'll try to keep that updated throughout the day, because it's really unclear what exactly it is. Two stories I think that are really important that you're really not going to see anywhere else, but I think have a dramatic impact on your life. One is something on the housing market. One has to do with something going on overseas. So quickly, the housing market matters because it's not just about housing prices. It's about all that we do when we move. It's a huge economic stimulus. So whether or not you're setting up a new house, you're selling your old house, you're spending money. That money is interconnected to everything in the economy. So this is why the housing market matters. And what we're starting to see is are mortgage rates that are below 4%, which is really, really historically low. And because home prices are so high in general across the nation, I mean, that's a sweeping generalization, but in general, because those lower borrowing costs are getting people to kind of come back into the housing market again. Springtime is the time that people like to look for houses. Again, it could be an economic stimulus. So I'm watching these headlines about mortgage rates dropping, not because I want to be a mortgage nerd. I don't, I don't, but I'm watching it because of what it could mean potentially for the housing industry and the housing sector, and then by proxy, all of us, what that could mean for all of us with the economy. So that's something I think you should know about. It's getting some news. Other big headline was a report by the Associated Press. This is an exclusive report based entirely on their reporting, but I think it's solid enough reporting that it's something to flag. They did an interview in Afghanistan with a young man that was sent to fight in Syria by Iran. He was trained, paid by Iran, and sent directly to the front lines in Syria. He has just come back to Afghanistan, where the Afghanistan government says there's at least 10,000 just like him. And they're concerned because Iran provided jobs for these Afghans when they don't have a thriving economy. So the Afghanistan government, according to the Associated Press, is really concerned about this, especially since the United States is looking at ways to withdraw from Afghanistan. How are we going to exit the longest war in American history? think that's a really crucial story because a lot of people talk about Iran mischief. How is Iran trying to strategize to gain influence around the world? Why does that matter when they want to obtain nuclear weapons, when they're a state sponsor of terror? Here's one of the reasons why. This is a really interesting perspective from a young man that says, listen, I can't find a job. Iran was able to hire me. I was able to get paid really, really well. And now that I'm back home, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. So I think that's a really important story. I linked to it on our source page, so you can check it out. Associated Press. You don't have to worry about subscription barriers or anything like that. It's a good read. Okay, last Friday we talked a little bit about this ongoing controversy with Chick-fil-A, and this was a very hard story to unpack. I thought this would not be as hard as it is very difficult because we wanted to give you some context about why Chick-fil-A was considered controversial by some and what's really going on. So here's a central question when you're looking at the Chick-fil-A controversy. There's a current controversy when it comes to the Texas Attorney General investigating the San Antonio City Council for voting against having a Chick-fil-A restaurant in the San Antonio airport because of a quote-unquote legacy of anti-gay discrimination. So here's the question that you need to ask yourself. Can you be for something and not discriminate against another group? Can you be for democratic principles but not discriminate against Republicans? Can you be for Black Lives Matter and not discriminate against white people? Can you be for traditional marriage and not anti-gay? And as I'm looking at all of these different stories, I think that's sort of the central question when it comes to Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A over the years, because they are a family-run business, a Baptist family-run business that says that they're guided by biblical principles. By the way, that's a water fountain that came on from outside. If you hear suddenly gushing water, it's not a flood, okay? It's just a water fountain that came on outside in our backyard. They're guided by these traditional family values. They say they do not discriminate against anybody, but there are those that say their stance, as well as where they donate their money, is a sign of anti-gay discrimination. And so over the years, not just recently, but over the years, there's been different areas that have prevented them from expanding because of this alleged platform. Chick-fil-A denies that. They say they don't discriminate against anybody. However, they do say that they embrace these biblical principles, and they do. One of their executives say they do believe in traditional marriage. So it sort of depends on how you look at that issue. The most recent debate is that there's this group, Think Progress, a progressive organization that says Chick-fil-A's donations to places like the Salvation Army, as well as the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, is a sign that they're continuing to donate to organizations that have anti-gay platforms. Those organizations themselves say they don't have anti-gay platforms. So you can see how this is kind of, it sort of depends on how the prism in which you see the world. So this is where it stands in Texas right now, is that the Attorney General wants to launch this investigation, is launching this investigation into the City Council because the First Amendment states that you cannot be discriminated based on your religious belief. And he says that this is why the City Council is discriminating against Chick-fil-A. I hope that makes sense. But there's another in Buffalo, New York. There's the same sort of story popping up again. So this is why we're seeing it again, because a couple groups looked into how Chick-fil-A was donating their money and said, well, if they're donating their money this way, that must mean that they are anti-LGBTQ, for example, or are discriminating against a certain group. Chick-fil-A says, we're here to serve everybody. We respect everybody's beliefs. So those are the two sides. Check out our card stack on that. We did a deeper dive than I ever thought about Chick-fil-A. But I think it's an interesting story that brings up questions about First Amendments, but also how far you can take assumptions. There was one of you who was really upset the other day because when I mentioned Chick-fil-A believing traditional marriage, I didn't mention that some believe that's discriminating against groups that advocate for same-sex marriage. That wasn't an intention. I was just trying to use Chick-fil-A's actual words and be very precise with the language of what they say they are doing, because they've been accused of different things and they deny those allegations. And there are those that say, well, they can deny those allegations, but it doesn't make it right. Okay, so that's kind of like an interesting story that's happening in America today. And I don't know about you, but Chick-fil-A is everywhere in Texas. You really can't drive very far without seeing one. So I think it's kind of an interesting thing to take a look at how this controversy sort of emerged. So there you go. Anyhow, guys, have a great week. Hope you're off to a good one. And please let us know if there's any other stories that you'd like us to check out. So I'd love to hear from you. All right, have a great day, guys. Talk to you later.